This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Teachers and parents usually call attention to the pictures when they read storybooks to preschool children. But a new study suggests that calling attention to the words and letters on the page may lead to better readers. The 2-year study compared children who were read to this way in class with children who were not. Those whose teachers most often discussed the print showed clearly higher skills in reading, spelling, and understanding. These results were found 1 year and even 2 years later. Shane Piasta, an assistant professor of teaching and learning at Ohio State University, was an author of the study. She says most preschool teachers would find this method manageable and would need only a small change in the way they teach. They already read storybooks in class. The only difference would be increased attention to the printed text. Ms. Piasta says if you get children to pay attention to letters and words, it makes sense that they will do better at word recognition and spelling. But she says research suggests that very few parents and teachers do this in a systematic way. The report appears in the journal Child Development. More than 300 children aged 4 and 5 were observed in classrooms in Ohio and Virginia. The children came from poor families and were below average in their language skills. This put them at risk for reading problems later. For 30 weeks, the children took part in a program called Project STAR for Sit Together and Read. The project is based at Ohio State. It tests the short-term and long-term results of reading regularly to preschool children in their classrooms. Laura Justice at Ohio State says researchers think they understand how information about print is transmitted from the adult to the child. This knowledge can be gained by having focused discussions when reading a book out loud. Professor Justice says this intervention can help adults center in on the things that children need and want to learn. There are different ways that adults can talk to children about print. They can point to a letter and discuss it, and even trace the shape with a finger. They can point out a word. This is dog. They can discuss the meaning of the print or how the words tell the story. And they can talk about the organization of the print. For instance, showing how words are written left to right in English. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Presutti. You can read and listen to our programs at voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Today, we have the last of 3 reports on bullying. Last week, we shared some of your comments on this issue. Now, we talk to a researcher who presented a study in May at the Pediatric Academic Society's meeting in Vancouver, Canada. Rashmi Shetgiri is a pediatrician at the University of Texas Southwestern Medical Center and Children's Medical Center, Dallas. Dr. Shetgiri said about 30% of American children are involved in bullying. She said about 13% of them are bullies, 11% are victims, and 6% are both bullies and victims. The new study, led by Dr. Shetgiri, shows that parents could help prevent bullying by improving communication and involvement with their children. The study identified factors that seem to increase or decrease the risk that a child will be a bully. She said children who have emotional or developmental problems or who have mothers who have poor mental health are more likely to be bullies. Older children and children who live in homes where their primary language is not English are less likely to be bullies. Another difference, the study found that African American and Latino children were more likely to be bullies compared to white children. For the study, the researchers used the 2007 National Survey of Children's Health. Parents of children aged 10 to 17 were asked whether their child bullies or is cruel or mean to others. Not surprisingly, how a parent acts may also influence whether or not a child becomes a bully. Parents who often get angry with their children and feel that the children often do things that bother them a lot are much more likely to have a child who becomes a bully. However, parents who share ideas with their children and talk with them are much less likely to have children who become bullies. University of Nebraska psychologist Susan Swearer says, communication between students and teachers can also reduce bullying. She says studies have shown improvement when students are taught about bullying and respectful behavior. Some programs also try to get people to intervene to stop bullying. Professor Swearer advises parents and teachers to try to get children to talk to them about being bullied. Otherwise, a child could feel hopeless and helpless to do anything about it. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.
I'm Alex Villarreal with the VOA Special English Education Report. No one likes to make mistakes, but a new study says organizations learn more from their failures than their successes and keep that knowledge longer. One of the researchers was Vinit Desai, an assistant professor at the University of Colorado Denver Business School. He worked with Peter Madsen from the Marriott School of Management at Brigham Young University in Utah. They did not find much long-term organizational learning from success. It is possible, they say. But Professor Desai says they found that knowledge gained from failure lasts for years. He says organizations should treat failures as a learning opportunity and not try to ignore them. The study looked at companies and organizations that launch satellites and other space vehicles. Professor Desai compared 2 American space shuttle flights. In 2002, a piece of insulating material broke off during launch and damaged a rocket on the Atlantis. Still, the flight was considered a success. Then, in early 2003, a piece of insulation struck the Columbia during launch. This time, the shuttle broke apart on re-entry and the 7 crew members died. NASA officials suspended all flights, and an investigation led to suggested changes. Professor Desai says the search for solutions after a failure can make leaders more open-minded. He points to airlines as an example of an industry that has learned from failures in the past. He advises organizations to look for useful information in small failures and failures they avoided. The mistakes we learn from do not have to be our own. We asked people on our Facebook page to tell us a time they had done something really silly. Fabricio Semino wrote, "Not long ago, I wanted to watch TV, but it wouldn't turn on, so I did everything I could to start it. 30 minutes later, my mom shows up and, passing by, says to me, 'Did you try plugging it?' I was like, 'I'm just dusting, Mum,' so she wouldn't notice how dumb I am sometimes." Bruno Kanieski da Silva told about a time he looked everywhere for his key. It was in his pocket. He wrote, "I always promise I will never do it again. But after a few weeks, where is my wallet? For sure it will be in a very logical place." You can find more comments like these on Facebook at VOA Learning English. For VOA Special English, I'm Alex Villarreal.
From VOA Learning English, this is Education. Immigration reform is a top policy goal this year in Washington. President Obama and a group of Democratic and Republican senators who have been preparing legislation agree on one thing. Millions of immigrants who are in the United States illegally will have to start learning English before they can begin the process of becoming legal residents. But school systems that face shrinking budgets are still cutting or eliminating English classes. Overcrowding is especially bad in California. That state is home to 1 of every 4 non-English speaking immigrants in the United States. But Margie McHugh of the Migration Policy Institute predicts a huge amount of unmet demand for English training all across the country. She says the current system is too limited. Until recently, California law provided money to be used just for adult education. But to help schools meet funding shortages, state legislators let them use that money for other programs. In Los Angeles, the adult education program has been cut by 75%. Once, the school district offered English at hundreds of neighborhood sites with day and evening classes. This year, the teaching hours will be reduced. California Governor Jerry Brown wants to take responsibility for adult education away from school districts. Their main focus is on children. He wants to give the responsibility to community colleges. Adult schools across the country are experimenting with computerized English instruction. They hope software will help substitute for the individual attention that beginning students need. For VOA Learning English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti. This is the VOA Special English Education Report. Students in Washington, D.C. returned to classrooms in August to begin a new school year. But at least 5% of their teachers did not return with them. In July, the District of Columbia Public Schools told 206 teachers that they were not good enough to stay. The school system in the nation's capital dismissed 75 teachers in 2010. It was the first year of a new teacher rating system. Experts say such large numbers of dismissals are rare in American schools. But in Washington, the rating system is not governed by the labor contract with the teachers' union. So school officials have more freedom. The system is called impact. Teachers are observed in the classroom 5 times a year for at least 30 minutes each time. They are also judged by student test scores. Administrators rated 65 of the 206 teachers as ineffective. The others lost their jobs because they were rated minimally effective for a second year. Emily Cohen at the National Council on Teacher Quality, a private research group, praises the impact system. This is an evaluation instrument that is finally able to capture who is highly effective and who is ineffective, and who could be doing better and could use some assistance. Most evaluation instruments in the country do not capture teacher performance. All teachers are rated satisfactory. Some Washington teachers say their ratings depend too heavily on test scores. For some teachers, half of their rating is based on how well their students do. But Emily Cohen says testing is probably the most objective data that we have on teacher performance. The district is also looking at other things, she says, so it's not just looking at student test performance. Teachers with the highest rating can receive a bonus of up to $25,000. In addition, they can receive a pay increase. Almost 60% of the teachers who were rated minimally effective in 2010 stayed in the school system and improved. School officials say these teachers received help to become better. The Washington Teachers Union says impact unfairly hurts teachers who work in schools with high rates of poverty. The Washington Post reported that most of the teachers with the highest rating work in schools with lower poverty rates. For VOA Special English, I'm Carolyn Prasuti. For more education news and to learn American English, go to voaspecialenglish.com.
This is the VOA Special English Education Report. John Wooden died in June at the age of 99. He was one of the greatest 20th century Americans in sports. He was an excellent college basketball player. He led Purdue University to a national championship in 1932. After college, he was a high school coach. He also taught English for 9 years. But where he really made his mark was at the University of California, Los Angeles. He was head coach of men's basketball for 27 years. His teams won a record 10 national championships. These included 7 in a row during the late 1960s and early 70s. The Bruins have won just one other championship since then. He coached famous players like Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, known then as Lou Alcindor, and Bill Walton. Several years ago, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar spoke at a ceremony honoring John Wooden. He said, "Many top athletes worry that they will be exploited for their skills by their coach. But that was not the case with John Wooden. The coach was praised for how he taught the basics of the game, like passing, defense, and moving without the ball. But he also offered life lessons as a speaker and author. His books included the self-improvement guide, Pyramid of Success. At a speaking event when he was already in his 90s, he explained that his father had taught him a few things about success. He said, "I was raised on a small farm in southern Indiana. Dad tried to teach me and my brothers that you should never try to be better than someone else. Always learn from others, and never cease trying to be the best you can be. That's under your control." Those words later helped him with his own definition of success. He said, "Peace of mind attained only through self-satisfaction and knowing you made the effort to do your best. I believe that is true. If you make the effort to do your best, trying to improve the situation that exists for you, I think that is success, and I do not think others can judge that." His wife of 53 years, Nell, died in 1985. At UCLA, the man known simply as Coach had a record of 620 wins and 147 losses. Current coach Ben Howland calls John Wooden the greatest coach in the history of basketball. And that's the VOA Special English Education Report.